Why do women gain weight in menopause? Are you in that position where you found that it's far more difficult now to lose weight than it was in your 20s, 30s, 40s? What is going on in the body? Well, today we're talking to my special guest, Nigel Denby, all about this. Nigel has specialized in helping women through the menopause transition for the better part of 25 years. He's the author of 10 books and regularly appears across print, television, and radio. Nigel has collaborated with Women's Health Concern, the patient arm of the British Menopause Society, to develop a menopause wellness hub, an online resource for lifestyle information for women and their partners. I went on the hub. It's very interesting. There's so much information over there. I encourage you to check that out. He's also produced guidance for the British Menopause Society to help healthcare professionals support their patients with menopause nutrition and weight gain. This is of concern for those of us in menopause. So I am thrilled to have Nigel on today. We're going to dive deep into these topics of nutrition, of fitness, of course, and that menopause weight gain. All right, let's welcome special guest Nigel Denby. So we're talking about that menopause weight gain today, and I'm here with my guest, Nigel Denby. Nigel, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining me.
It's such a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you know a little bit about women going through menopause and that dreaded weight gain. I hear about it lots. That we were okay in our 20s, 30s, a lot of us, and then in our 40s, 50s, 60s, now we're gaining weight, and it seems like there's no way to lose it for a lot of us. And it's problematic, and we're struggling, and we don't want this. So let's dive into this conversation. Let's start by asking you this question. Why? Why, oh, why are we gaining weight in menopause?
Tracy, it is literally a perfect storm for
Yeah.
weight gain. So there's really good reason. We can look at this from a hormonal, a metabolic, and a behavioral way to understand what's going on. You're right, I've been specializing in menopause for the last 25 years and regularly contribute content to the British Menopause Society on this very subject. So, what is happening? Well, as we know, with most symptoms of menopause, estrogen is hugely involved here. Just to put this in context, at least 70% of women will gain around about 10 kilos over the time of their perimenopause. That can be anything from 6 to 10 years. 10 kilos is about 21 pounds, a bit more than that. And if you're 5'6", 5'7", that's a dress size,
Yeah.
particularly troublesome because of where it accumulates around the middle. So estrogen is the thing that gave you or gives you your female shape. It gives you that nipped in waist. Even if you've always been on the heavy side, the likelihood is your waist would have been smaller than your hips and your bust. And that was down to estrogen. As your estrogen levels change, it doesn't make you gain the weight, but it changes where the weight goes. And essentially, you start laying fat down like a man around the middle. That's why you find your bra doesn't fit, your trousers don't fit, your jackets don't fit, because it all starts to accumulate around the trunk. But that's only part of the story. At the same time, and you'll absolutely get this from your fitness side of things, from the age of about 35, all of us start losing muscle tissue. That's our natural aging process. We call it sarcopenia. We reckon that could mean that your calorie requirements reduce by anything up to around 100 calories a day each year. And again, that doesn't sound like an awful lot. It's a potato, it's a slice of bread, but really easy to overconsume if you don't make changes to accommodate that. So now we've got two things going on. The metabolic rate is slowing down. It's the muscle tissue that processes the calories that go in. So if you lose muscle tissue, your calorie requirements reduce. Add to this that where your body naturally lays down fat changes, and we then start to see, right, becomes much easier for me to gain weight, and I'm gaining it in different places. This is now really noticeable. But then there's more. So most women going through menopause will not necessarily experience all, what is it now, 48 symptoms that we can have listed, but you're probably going to experience some of them.
Sure.
And if you're not sleeping, if you've got aches and pains, if you've just got poor energy, if you're struggling at work, if your relationship isn't so great, because you've lost your libido, or you're just irritable and fed up, it is pretty likely that you're either going to reach for foods and alcohol that you might ordinarily be a bit more careful about, and you're probably a bit less likely to feel motivated to jump into your Zumba class, if you have just been running on empty. So we often see quite discreet but impactful changes in food choice and exercise behavior that, added to this reduction in metabolic rate, this change in hormone levels, mean that weight gain literally is almost inevitable unless you're taking action before menopause starts. And of course, that's where, thankfully, in the last few years, we've got more advanced, we've got more awareness about menopause, and we can start saying to women, look, don't wait for this to happen. Start putting in weight training, start putting in some extra activity right now, and that's really going to make a difference. A lengthy explanation, but I think it's really important for women to grasp this.
Absolutely. And I love what you said, that it is this discrete weight gain, because so many women will say to me, I'm doing nothing different, right? But inevitably, you're consuming a little bit more calories than you did before. Hormones are fluctuating, so
Mhm.
estrogen is dropping. We're losing that lean muscle tissue, which exactly helps to make the body more metabolic. So it's slowly over time, tiny increments day by day. And then all of a sudden you're in this spot and you're thinking, I've done nothing different.
Exactly. And in actual fact, there you are. That's the issue. You need to do something different, because what you've done in your 30s does not now work. This is what I'll often find, I know so many women who, know how to eat well. They know about exercising, and they've managed to keep things fairly stable in their 30s without having to sort of take holy orders. They've had a life. They've enjoyed their holidays. They enjoy going out to eat, enjoy a drink here and there, and that kind of thing, and that just keeps it steady. But you've got to get your head around the fact that once menopause comes along, or perimenopause comes along, this is now a different body. You have estrogen receptors in every cell of your body, and the levels of estrogen are declining fairly rapidly. So
Mhm.
whatever you did to manage this and control this pre-menopause, we've now got a clean slate. We've got to find a new way, because this is a new body. And that's even the case if you choose to use hormone replacement therapy. You won't be getting enough estrogen to take you back up to those premenopause levels. All the hormone replacement therapy will give you is enough estrogen to take the edge off the symptoms. That's what it's meant to do.
Yeah, I think it's so crucial that you mentioned these three elements, that there is this hormonal fluctuation, there is this metabolic fluctuation, and our lifestyle, what we're doing, needs to come into play too. Let's talk about those behavioral changes
Mm.
that are important at this time in our lives.
Absolutely. So I think for many, many women leading up to menopause, their focus has been on aerobic exercise, if
Mhm.
they're doing anything. So they're going to the Zumba classes, they're going to hit, they maybe run, these kinds of things. And that is really important. But there are three pillars of exercise. Yes, you need to keep up the aerobic exercise, but far too few women engage in strength exercise. Now, the way I always look at this is, you cannot do anything to change your reduction in estrogen. All you can do is take some HRT if you choose to, and that will help with the symptoms, but you can't stop that happening. You can reverse the muscle loss.
Yeah.
You've got to think about strength exercise as probably the most effective anti-aging adaptation you can make to your life, better than any cream, better than any expensive lotion or serum. If you don't use muscles, you'll lose them. If
Yeah.
you start using them regularly, you don't have to turn into some muscle Mary in the gym. If you just start doing 15 minutes, 10 minutes of daily strength exercise, you'll begin to build new muscle. Your body has to, because it recognizes you're asking it to do more. So it will make more muscle. And that is like plugging yourself back into the mains in terms of boosting your metabolism. So before we even start thinking about diet, think about strength.
Yeah.
And strength exercise that is going to work your big muscle groups, your chest, your quads, your glutes, your core, and your back and shoulders. And those can be so simple. You don't even need to leave the house to do those things. You can do them in 10 minutes before you jump in the shower. And that will make a huge difference. And again, more often and regularly, much, much better than flogging yourself in a 1 hour really hard workout once a week. Just do little bits every day.
Absolutely. Our audience knows that all too well, that the goal is always to be able to show up again tomorrow. And, so going hard out of the blocks because you think you need to get that good old Saturday, warrior workout in, and you can't show up the rest of the week, doesn't mean you've won, right? We want to have dripping water on the stone that hollows it out, not through force, but through persistent action, says Ovid. My
I
favorite
love
quote.
it.
Yeah, it's a good
You
one.
just need, I will say to our members, you just need to feel the next day ever so slightly tender that you've done it.
Yeah.
Then that's muscle regeneration.
Yeah.
But without being uh, you got to be able to wipe your own bottom. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? If you've done it so much that you're in pain and you can't move, you're
Yeah.
never going to do this again. So start gently. And it's where, again, having expert advice from people like you is so important, because you will show women how to do it safely, how to do it appropriately. I've got involved in menopause, and most of the women that I work with are not the elite. These are real women living real lives, and the vast majority of them haven't been in a strength exercise class for 30 years. So we've got to start gently. And we've got to be teaching them with instructors who are menopausal themselves, who get it. You don't want bits of fluff in, lycra shrieking every time they do the splits. You want real women who really get it and can have so much experience to nurture you and hold your hand as you start to really embrace movement and exercise.
Yeah, it definitely is a priority in our company, our business, and a priority for me as well. I want to continue moving and increasing my strength for longevity.
Yeah.
Um, let's go into the nutrition side of
Mm.
things. Like strength, yes, that muscle building, a huge priority, very important. But you can't out train a bad diet, can you?
A
So
hundred percent.
if we want to see that shift in our body composition, then we need to pay attention to nutrition. It has to be in the driver's seat. So let's dive into this conversation about what that could look like for the menopausal woman?
Okay, first and foremost, there is no such thing as a menopause diet. You don't need
Yeah.
a menopause diet. And I think it's really important to say also, you do not need to be intermittent fasting. You don't need to be measuring your blood glucose levels with every food that you consume. This is where we really have to look at what the evidence is telling us about why most people's diets need a little bit of tweaking. And it is just the same across the pond as it is here in the UK. So, bottom line is most of us eat too big a portions. We don't eat enough fruit and vegetables. We eat too much fat, too much sugar. We drink too much booze, and we don't move enough. That is it. It's
Those are the
under,
basics. Yeah.
yeah, it is totally. My weight management program is called Back to Basics.
Oh,
Exactly that.
there you go.
So I think, women are so uh, bombarded with nutritional nonsense and pseudoscience. When we look at intermittent fasting, when we look at continuous glucose monitoring, what we actually see is, they are really nothing other than, there's no more science behind them than cutting out a few calories. That can be done in a much less painful way. And of course, in a sustainable way, because as soon as you stop intermittent fasting, or as soon as you get fed up with measuring your blood sugars with everything you eat, that weight just piles on. For me, this is the gift of perimenopause. It is actually your moment to stop dieting. This is your time to create a lifelong lifestyle plan that is going to take you into your 80s. It's about creating those 80, 90-year-old women that other women look at and think, gosh, I want to be like her when I'm
Mhm.
there. Digging your own garden, decorating your own house, really living well. And that starts now. And it's kind of, again, without trying to scare people, this is the last chance. This is your moment to
Mhm.
really try kind of choose how you want those decades ahead of you to be. So when we think about diet, well, what would we do? Well, if you're looking at your portion sizes, have a look around at the other people in the house. If you've got teenage kids, a male partner, if you're eating a similar size portion to them, you can't do that. It needs to reduce. And very often, an appropriate size of a meal portion would fit into your cupped hands.
Mhm.
That is about right to reach satiety, not to be stuffed. And
Mhm.
all satiety is to think, I am now satisfied. I am no longer hungry. But you've also got to go into your meal feeling hungry, but not ravenous. And so I'm always encouraging women, look back over the day and eat regularly. Don't miss meals. If you want to have a breakfast and a snack and a lunch and a snack and then an evening meal, that is absolutely fine if that helps you manage your portion size. Remember, Tracy, we're only talking about saving 100 or 200 calories a day. So that doesn't mean you have to cut any food groups out. You don't have to cut any meals out. You can probably do this eating similar foods to the foods you already eat, but maybe just change the portion size. Another guide I love to do that really helps with, we mentioned there, we don't eat enough fruit and veg. I've been a dietitian for 30 odd years. We were talking about 5 a day when I trained, and here in the UK, we still only eat about 3.5 servings a day. So let's change the narrative. Let's just look at the plate. If you've got your plate already, filling your cupped hands, great. Now let's look at how you balance those food
Mhm.
groups. And I always feel like, the Pope when I'm doing this, but you'll see what I'm doing. You look at your plate like this and you imagine it divided into 4 quarters. We want 1/4 protein, 1/4 carbohydrate, and half of that plate fruit, vegetables, or salad.
Mhm.
If you do that, your fruit and veg intake is going to rocket. It's going to keep you feeling full. It's going to give you beautiful nutrients, vitamins, and antioxidant minerals and vitamins. It's going to give you more fiber. So we're ticking off lots of those issues that we've identified in the national diet. Protein is incredibly important. But again, you don't need to be eating protein balls or protein bars throughout the day or drinking hideous milkshakes and all these kinds of things. You can do this by eating protein at every meal and choosing good quality protein, eggs, fish, meat if you eat it. If you're vegetarian, really varying the types of vegetarian protein that you consume. So beans and pulses and tofu and tempeh and nuts and really varying that up. And then the carbohydrate element, you know, ideally whole grains, absolutely fantastic. But do you know what? Again, if you've been carb phobic for the last 20 years, as so many women have, and all you can really dare eat is, a little bit of brown rice or something like that, go for it. But you have got to eat carbohydrate because we're asking you to exercise more. And
Yeah.
your carbohydrate is the fuel. It's like putting gas in your car. It's the fuel to do the exercise. And you cannot do that exercise if you're running on empty.
Absolutely. I like what you said about the just approaching nutrition in different ways. And ideally, our goal is to create a sustainable strategy for the long haul. So, yes, a lot of us have found intermittent fasting was a buzzword a number of years ago. We're seeing that decline, which is good. It can still work for some people. I don't want to
Mhm.
demonize it, but if one of your targets is to increase lean muscle tissue, and you're intermittent fasting, the likelihood of you being able to get that adequate protein amount in your smaller eating window is not great.
No,
Right. So a strategy that might work better then, of course, is the what you have alluded to, those smaller meals throughout the day. Uh, what I
sure.
what I really liked what you said too is I think all of us um, are going to have this different relationship with food, and we have to do what works for us. But there's so many strategies in what you've said already. So paying attention to satiety and hunger levels. So your intuitive eating, this improving the relationship with food, the portion control, right? Taking a look at your hand and ensuring that you're not going over in your
Yeah.
portions, but that you have that palm of protein, cup of carbs, two fists of veg, a thumb of fat. You talked about the smaller meals and
Mm.
ensuring that you have protein, carbs, and fat. So we're looking at that macronutrient balancing and ensuring that we get those adequate amounts. So many, many strategies here, folks. It doesn't have to be one way or the other, right? But yeah, I really appreciate that you've alluded to all of those different sustainable strategies.
I want it to be simple. You know
Yeah.
what drives me crazy, Tracy, is, we've got to remember the diet industry is exactly that. It is an industry designed to keep you hooked in it forever. This is where, again, I get excited because this is your chance to break free of all of that. And if we have spent so much time whittling and worrying about those micronutrients. And as you've absolutely hit it, get your macros right and your micros look after yourself pretty much if you vary things up. It is not that difficult. I think the other thing that's also useful to think about here is when you're sat at that table with the family, aim to finish last. If
Mm,
you
yeah.
slow down, you will hit that satiety moment. So it will become so much clearer to you. Women are multitasking and spinning plates. Women are racing through meals, worrying about getting the laundry done, loading the dishwasher up so that they can finally sit down. You know, a big part for me in helping to coach women to eat better is actually looking at some of those plates and saying, which ones can we drop a little
Hmm.
here, because a lot of them are not always necessary. But the reason for slowing down, let's think about evolution. We are human beings. We are hunter-gatherers. That's how we were created. In some of us, we really have the natural inclination to gorge, eat quickly and eat a lot. That is an evolutionary thing that stays with us. So for most of us, that feeling of satiety is a slightly delayed reaction, just in the same way that when you exercise and you get thirsty, you're already dehydrated. So if you can slow down and really be quite mindful about your eating, no device, no phone, concentrate on the food. Um, and then when you've taken that smaller amount, which initially you might look and think, is that it? Compared with everybody else, you slow down. And then when you finish that, check in with yourself and think, am I still hungry? Now, still hungry is very different from that was really tasty and I'd like some more. Really tasty and I'd
Absolutely.
like some more is
Yes.
that's lunch tomorrow. Those are
Yeah.
leftovers.
Yeah.
But am I still hungry? If you are, and sometimes you will be, especially if you're doing more exercise,
Sure.
then you go back and have some more. You have no business leaving a dinner table still feeling hungry. That's what a dieter does. That's not what we're interested in.
No.
You must be satisfied. But I guarantee you, eight, 9 times out of 10, you will have taken that smaller amount, slowed down, and realized, actually, I've had enough. I'm satisfied. But that will only happen with regular eating and by slowing down just a little bit.
I look at my father, who is always the last to finish his meal, and he has never been overweight. It's interesting. One of the things that we teach too is one bite, one breath.
Uh,
So, right, you pick up your fork, you take a bite, put the
yeah,
fork down in between, have a breath, have a conversation, right? Have a sip of water. And
yeah.
and that can really slow down things as well. So I like that strategy. I think that's great.
We're on the same page, and I think all of these things, all of these strategies, tools are all about just learning a new habit. And I think we forget that our relationship with food and with eating is, well, good and bad relationships. They are all built out of habit and repetition. When you start to learn a new way of doing something, it's probably going to take you about 12 weeks for that to start to really just feel normal. And so any strategy, any tool that you can use throughout that transition is brilliant. That's where I think, it's really that's where you individualize these things. You try all of the things, and then you start to find what's working for you.
Yeah, I think habit is one compartment that is really important to pay attention to. Another thing I think is the why behind the drive to eat or overeat, right? I think oftentimes we don't explore that. We don't take a look at the reasons why we've gotten to the situation that we're in, or perhaps all of the things that are happening in our lives around it that are causing that. You did allude to that at the very beginning, like what's the driver towards overeating or medicating with food? What do you say to women who, maybe perhaps need to explore that a little bit more first?
Sure. I think, again, what we might call emotional eating or trigger eating is, show me anyone who doesn't do that. I do that on occasions where you
Fair
just
enough.
think, I am fed up and I want to eat buns or whatever it might be, and really and truly, occasionally eating something just because it makes you feel good. There's nothing wrong with doing that. The food police aren't going to arrive and arrest you for that. But if you are regularly consuming alcohol or food because your emotions are struggling, that is probably going to be an issue because it is highly likely that your emotions are going to be up and down during this hormonal transition as well. So a few things to do here. Again, regular eating. We've got to actually try and control some of those blood sugars. So we
Sure.
want to not have those big peaks and troughs. That's also where the whole grains and the protein, eating those foods together, really come in. But I think for a lot of women, there are two times in the day which are particularly dangerous, if you like. And that's kind of that mid-afternoon, or the time when you're maybe thinking about preparing an evening meal. And then later in the evening, maybe 9, 10 o'clock, you finally sit down in front of the TV, and then it's, what can I have?
Yeah.
Oh, where's the kids' chocolate, or whatever it might be. Now, again, cravings, I think, are fascinating. A craving is a chemical reaction that's going on in the brain. And we understand this from people with, who smoke or use drugs or alcohol. That craving can only be maintained for about 6 or 7 minutes. That
Mhm.
chemical reaction that gives you that almost, unavoidable desire for whatever it is you're craving. So here's what I say again: that dieter mentality is, I can't eat chocolate, I can't eat cookies, I can't eat cake. Can't. That is diet talk. Let's think. Right, you get the craving and you think, right, I know what it is. That English guy was talking about this. I remember it. Okay, let's try this. First of all, I'm going to give it 15 minutes. Start your clock on your phone, on your Apple Watch, whatever it is, and you say, so we're not saying can't, we're going to see how we feel in 15 minutes. Probably go and get a drink of, water, cup of tea, whatever. Let's make sure you're not thirsty. Possibly even just take yourself out of the situation, even if it's just for a minute. Get up, move about, do something. After 15 minutes, see how you feel. If this was a craving, it will have passed. If you're genuinely hungry, then you probably need an extra snack. And that could be something like a handful of nuts, a couple of oat cookies, or a rye cracker with some cream cheese or some hummus. The sorts of good, sustainable, healthy snacks. And again, I think there is still a test to put in there. Sometimes, you've done that, you've registered you are genuinely hungry, and then you think about a piece of fruit and you think, I don't want a piece of fruit, I want chocolate. Well, then you've got a decision to make.
Sure.
And if you make the decision, own it. The point here is that you're not eating chocolate at 9 o'clock, 6 nights out of 7. That maybe that happens 2 or 3 times a month. And when it does happen 2 or 3 times a month, it's a big deal. Who cares? It's not an issue. It's when you actually start breaking it down and realize that you do have control over this. It might also be the thing, though, that lets you see, actually, maybe I should be putting in an afternoon snack just to take the edge off that hunger so that I can have a balanced dinner in the evening, and then make sure, that I'm really looking after that hunger mechanism throughout the day. I'm really, it just, I really want women to understand that they do not need some kind of radical program to get in control of this. It is once and for all the time to understand what's going on with your body, understand there are elements of your lifestyle that probably need a little bit of tidying up. That's all. But you do not need to be getting up at 5 a.m. and gathering mushrooms at the bottom of a mountain with the morning dew on. You don't need any of this hocus pocus. What we need to be able to do is kind of do an evaluation of our whole lifestyle, especially including that movement and the diet element. And sometimes I'll even say, look, just look at this and imagine that your teenage daughter was eating like you do. Would you be comfortable with that? What would you say she needs to do? It's probably what you need to do.
Yeah. Chill out. Yeah. Um, I was thinking about Anna Lemke's book, Dopamine Nation, when you were talking about the cravings and what drives us. And I love the fact that you alluded to saying, just wait that 15 minutes. And she does this sort of, conversation about doing this dopamine detox and trying
Mhm.
not to chase the high, right? And so that's what happens. We anticipate how good a chocolate cookie or whatever will make us feel. And so it's we get a flood of dopamine and we instantly have to go, like it's like almost you have no choice once that dopamine is flooded and you're thinking about it. And so giving yourself that 15 minutes and allowing that circuitry to calm down, right? I think is such a great strategy to help that moment pass and then to say to yourself, what is it that is going on inside of me right now? Is it hunger? Is it thirst? Is it not wanting to feel maybe the uncomfortable feelings that I have right now and wanting those to dissipate? And I know that a chocolate cookie in my mouth will help me do that. So
Yeah,
it's a real analyzing of what's happening inside of yourself. And I think that knowing thyself, as Aristotle said, is a really important part of this, right? This journey back to our healthiest selves. We've got to understand what's going on inside, what's driving us, what's driving these mechanisms, and begin that journey of understanding ourselves better.
absolutely. And if the logic comes into this, again, we were not born craving chocolate or cookies or potato chips. We learned to do that, and we learned to do that in a response to an emotional trigger. I'm bored, I'm lonely,
Yeah.
I'm tired, I'm angry, whatever it might be. Now, again, that those feelings can be really strong, but they can also be broken and changed. And I think
Mhm.
that's the empowering part of this. And often people will say to me, you know, yeah, but you're a man. What do you know about menopause or what have you? The issue is, I'm a registered dietitian. I know about nutrition. I don't know what it is like to experience menopause, but I have worked with enough women to know what some of those drivers are. I absolutely know what it is like to change behaviors.
Mm.
For many years, I chain smoked. I'm an alcoholic. I've been
Mm.
sober for many, many years now.
Mhm.
Nobody can accuse me of not knowing how tough it can be to change behaviors. But I absolutely promise you, if you want to do it, you can do it. And it is never as painful or as tough as you think it's going to be. Gosh, I can remember thinking, how could I ever be in a social situation without a drink?
Mm.
And actually, the first few times I did it, do you know what? It was quite easy, and really, it just needed a bit of thought. I needed to prepare myself. I needed an answer if someone was going to say to me, "Are you not drinking?" And actually, once I had all of those tools and strategies, it was fine. And this is the same sort of thing. There is no point trying to beat a craving for chocolate if you haven't eaten all day. You haven't got a hope. But if you've eaten relatively well, if you've balanced your foods, if you've monitored your hunger and what have you, the chances are you try that 15-minute technique when the chocolate craving comes along and you'll smash it.
How did you get to that point in your own life where you were strong enough to make that change for good?
I think of it as a bit of the gift of desperation, if you like, of just thinking, this I keep doing the same thing over and over and over, and it does not serve me well.
Mm.
Now, again, if you have been on every diet in the book and feel absolutely just fed up with the whole thing, well, that's where I sort of think, well, this is great. Now we can do some business. Let's just throw the rest of those diets away and actually look at a longer term plan and a less radical and a lifestyle plan. You've got to be ready. And I think the other thing to remember as well about perimenopause is if you are on your knees with symptoms, you can't do any of the stuff you and I are talking about. You've got to get your symptoms under control. Perimenopause for about 25% of women can be horrendous. It doesn't have to be. And there is a whole range of treatment out there for you, not all hormone based. There are many prescribable medications that are available to you and many lifestyle interventions that can help. So there's a massive choice. But burying your head in the sand and just thinking you're the only one who's going through it, those days are over. We've finished that now. This happens to every single woman.
Yeah.
And it is nothing to be ashamed of. And the help is there.
Yeah.
So I would always say, if you've got symptoms, if you're struggling, get those sorted out first. Then we can do what we need to do to sort out the weight. And if you do, actually, and if you get hold of it and feel like you're really taking control, once and for all, that's when you can be one of those women who say, do you know what? The menopause was the best thing that ever happened to me. I really got in control of my health, my life, my diet. And you will be able to really thrive. You should thrive through this. You've got more years ahead of you than you have behind you. We're going to live into our 90s now. Make them really count. Make them be brilliant. You've done the hard work. You've brought your kids up. You've done your job. You've stuck with the guy that you've been with or whatever for as many years as you have. This is your time, and it's your time to thrive, not just survive this bit.
Yes, that is a great ending point right there. This is your time to thrive, ladies. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time here today, Nigel. This was really informative. I am certain that our listeners are taking away a lot of great strategies and tips from this session. Where can people work with you? How can they find you? Let us know where people can follow you on social media as well.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm on Instagram under menopause_dietitian. My community is called Your Menopause by Harley Street at Home. And we are a really lovely community of women and experts who are just guiding you to the choices that are available to you. We do lots and lots of content, which is very symptom specific. So if all you want to do is manage your sleep a bit better, or look at your intimate health or your anxiety, there is kind of like the Netflix of menopause of video content there that is led by British Menopause Society accredited specialist doctors. So we totally work to an evidence base. It's not preachy. It's about laying out to you what you can do, and you choose to do as much or as little as you need.
Yeah. That sounds like a wonderful resource. So I will link all of that in the show notes below if you're interested. And I encourage you to follow Nigel. This was very informative, and no doubt he has so much more amazing information to share with us on your health journey. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for joining. As always, go move daily in your fitness, wellness, and nutrition. And we'll see you all in the next Move Daily Talks.